So I'd like to walk you guys through this exercise. If it's okay, can we use, what kind of deals do you guys typically do? What's your typical bread and butter kind of a deal?
Okay, so let's just use something that's kind of maybe countrywide average. So, I mean, what if we picked a property that's worth about 300,000? Would that work?
Yeah, but again, it really, everybody's going to be different. So it really depends on the strategy. It depends if you're long-term buy and hold versus flips, all that kind of stuff. So are we going to say, let's say it's a single family home with a suite, or just a single family home, long-term buy and hold? Everybody can kind of get their head around that. Would you agree?
Sure. Perfect.
If we did like 450, then we could do it with a suite, long-term buy and hold.
Okay, let's do that.
Okay, let's do that. That's pretty reasonable across the country, I think. This is where the math gets a little hard, you guys. So we might have to kind of spitball it here a little bit. You guys at home, if you really want to crunch the numbers, I highly recommend you do this. But let's say, you guys, over a 10-year period, because probably if you're buying and holding this property, you're probably going to hold it longer than 10 years. But can we say 10 years just to give us a beginning?
Let's do that.
What do you think your profit on that deal would be, taking into account, depending on how you count them, the 7 or 8 different profit centers there are in real estate? So if we look at instant equity when we get into the property, if we look at, everybody looks at appreciation, market appreciation, a realistic number, let's say, the national average around 3% a year, that would be pretty realistic. If we look at forced appreciation, if you're putting some sweat equity into that property, if you're fixing it up, if you're sprucing it up, if we take a look at cash flow, obviously, right? Cash flow is king. If we look at mortgage pay down, that's a huge one, right? If we take a look at all of those we'll leave depreciation out of there and reinvestment and leverage and that kind of stuff, but let's focus on those ones. What's your best guess at what your profit would be on that property over 10 years?
So let's say we start at 450, we end after 10 years at a $600,000 value. So there's a $150,000 gain there. So that's 3% per year over 10 years, roughly, is about 600,000. Over 10 years, we might pay down that mortgage, about $50,000, probably more than that.
I think it'd be a bit more than that.
I have no idea.
I'm looking at TIFF for numbers.
Out. Yeah,
so,
and how did you just figure that out in 2 seconds?
So let's say that's $200,000 gain there, and we were doing $300 a month cash flow per year. That's $3,600 a year times 10 years is $36,000. So let's say $240,000 gain over that 10 years.
Okay.
With those 3 profit centers. So I don't know if you want to add or subtract from that.
So I think with a single family home with a suite, yeah, I think that's probably pretty realistic, Corey. If we added a few other things, but let's say that's what it is. Let's say it's $240,000. Would that seem fairly realistic? And Tiffany, what do you think? Is that out to lunch, or are we pretty much on track there?
You're on track. I mean, I'm not a numbers person at all. I have no clue. So.
You and me both. That's why you'll like this, because I keep it simple, because I need to keep it simple. One little other thing to throw in here. So that's probably our total gross profit over 10 years, right? Now, let's assume that we've had an investor partner on board who brought the money to the table. You guys are the deal makers. You're the active partners. Are you probably, let's say on a deal like this, you're doing a 50-50 split. Is that fair?
Sure. So perfect.
So your actual profit would be half of that 240,000, right? So it'd probably be 120,000, correct?
Yep.
All right. So we'll just put that there. Your average profit, 120,000 for the deal. Now, the next question I have is, for that kind of deal, how much capital are you going to need to get into that property? So if we take into account, depending on the province you're in, it's 20% down, probably minimum. Let's say 20% down. Closing costs in most provinces, except for Alberta, property transfer fees, taxes, all that kind of good stuff. What is your guess on that $450,000 property?
Okay, so 450, 20% down is 90,000. When we add in all the closing costs, land transfer, all of that. So let's say 10,000 for that to be really, really safe. So 100,000 even.
Oh, beautiful. I love that. Okay. So $100,000 is what we need to get into that deal. Everybody's got a different point of view on this, but I always recommend that, especially for single family homes, try to focus on having one investor for that deal instead of, one investor with 100 grand is so much better than 5 investors with 20 grand. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Totally, 100%.
Absolutely. All right. So number of investors needed for that kind of a deal, one investor. Now, the number 3 thing we have here is number of deals over time. Number of deals over time. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, let's say we're doing a good job with that investor partner. How many times do we think that person would reinvest with us? How many times do we think that person would either come up with another 100 grand, or when we cash them out or refinance them out of this deal, they'd reinvest that money with us? What's your conservative estimate on that? Not being pie in the sky, not being super down on it. What do you, conservatively, what do you think? How many times?
Based on our experience and what we did in having all the investors that we had, I would say that probably on average they bought about 3 properties each.
Yeah, I would say every single one except for one of our joint venture partners purchased more than one for sure.
Yeah.
Some did 15, some did 20, some did
but for
3
the most
or 2. But I would say
the average
if we were to pick a
investor-
really conservative number, I would say 3.
3. Okay, good. So let's put that down there. 3. And you guys bear with me as we're going through this. This is really important numbers here. We're going to have fun with math here. Number of deals over time, 3. All right. Well, this is simple geek math, you guys. Don't freak out because I'm definitely not a math nerd, but I like this math. Okay, one more question for you guys, and then we'll crunch the numbers here. So now we figured out what our average profit is on a deal. We figured out, how much capital we need for that kind of a deal, how many investors we need for it. Conservatively, how many times they'll invest with us. Now, you guys have been around the block a lot when it comes to joint venture partners, investor partners. If you're doing a good job, how many referrals do you think you could get on average, from an investor?
So we've gotten numerous referrals. In fact, a lot of our joint venture partners came from other joint venture partners. So
a lot of them.
What would you say would be very, very conservative?
Very, very conservative. I'd say 2 referrals per partner that we had referred 2 other deals or 2 other people to us. Maybe I would say maybe even 3. But
so can we be super conservative and say 1?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Be okay. Just again, I'd rather be conservative than over the top here. So we're going to say that you're going to get 1 referral over time from that investor partner. Some people might refer 6 people to you. Some people might refer no people to you. But on average, can we say it's 1 per investor over time? Is that fair?
Sure.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay, perfect.
So then here's as hard as the math's going to get for me on this thing. The referral multiplier. So if we're getting one referral for each investor, that means the referral multiplier is 2. That means 1 investor turns into 2 investors. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Is that, Tiffany, I'll ask you because I think Corey's a bit of a math guy, and you and I, maybe that's not our forte. So if it makes sense to Corey, that's great, but I want to make sure it makes sense to all of us non-mathy people as well. Again, I've spared no expense here, you guys. Doing this, but we'll plunk in our numbers. So we said our average profit per deal was $120,000, correct?
Yep.
And that we need 1 investor for this kind of deal, correct?
Yep.
And we said that over time, conservatively, these people will probably do 3 deals with us, right? Yeah. And if we apply the referral multiplier, which would be 2, that gives us the numbers we need to work with. All right. So Corey, you can help me along with this. 120,000 divided by 1 gives us what?
120,000.
All right. Now here's where it gets a little tough. Multiply that by 3. What's 120,000 times 3?
360. I know that one.
Nice. All right. 360. And then if we apply the referral multiplier in there, what does that bring it to?
720.
720.
Yep.
All right. So here's what I want you to look at. I want you to look at that number. This,
Beautiful.
when I figured this out, for my real estate business. At the time, I was doing rent-to-own deals, and my number was not that great. My average profit on a deal was about 40,000. Again, it was a shorter term deal, and I was super conservative on things, but my lifetime value was $120,000, which for me at that time, I thought, oh my God, and it's mind boggling, $120,000. My previous business with all the overhead and all the crap and, at 50 employees and all this stuff, lifetime worth of a client was $11,000 or $12,000. This was 10 times as much with real estate. Now look at the number that we've conservatively figured out for you guys, $720,000. That's what an investor is worth to you in your share of the profits over the lifetime of your relationship with that investor.
And I just have to say, we go on and on and on about how this is an emotional game. This is tough stuff to get investors. It's rejection after rejection. It's hard to keep on going. And I've never seen it broken down like that, Dave, because
nobody else has ever done it yet. Knock on wood. I've done this for lots of people. Nobody else has cracked this number. So I'll give myself a little kudo for that one.
There you go.
Big kudos, because you know what? Some of the comments we're getting is, whoa, wow. And those are conservative numbers, wowzers. So, people are really happy to see this and get this concept, because it really goes to show the value of finding one partner can add so much value.
And then just again, to address Tiffany's point, absolutely. So when the going gets tough and we're kind of slogging through things and things aren't happening as fast as we want them, and whatever's going on, always remember that number. Maybe have it on a little card, have it somewhere, and have it written out completely. No, don't just say to myself, oh yeah, an investor's worth $720K. No, an investor is worth $720,000 to me. Now let's put that in perspective for a second. The average Canadian salary right now is right around $45,000 a year.
Right.
How long would it take the average Canadian to make $750,000? Answer, they're never going to do it, right? It's just,
exactly.
And that's just one investor. Now imagine we have 2, 3, 4, 5 investors chugging along with you. What's that going to look like? Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
We will talk soon.